Hey everyone, it's Nicole and Steve, and it's fall here in Michigan, one of our favorite times.
We're going to talk about one of my favorite little tricks that I do in fall photography. We're going to talk about reflections and light. In fact, we're going to put the two together to make some really cool light reflections. This is a trick I use using fall color and water to reflect sunlit fall color in shaded water. It's a really cool technique and it's something you can do anywhere. So stay tuned, it's going to be fun. All right, so here's the scene. We're at Autrain Falls, and it's the middle of the day. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We've got full sun, blue skies. We've got some fall color around. We've got this beautiful cherry tree that's all yellow. So what we're doing is we're looking for a shaded part of the stream that's reflecting a sunlit tree in fall color, like that right there. I don't know how that shows up on video, but now we're lining up that color with the rocks, and I'll show you the image. I think with the video it doesn't really compress it as well as the photograph does, but that's what we're looking for. We're looking for sunlit foliage reflected in shade. All right, let's look at some examples and show you some of the fun things you can do using this technique. So this picture was actually made at that exact same location. So just to set up again, we're on a shaded part of the river with a sunlit tree reflected in the water. Now, lining everything up is critical to the success of this. The easiest way I find to do this is to actually take my camera off the tripod, move through the scene, find where I get the most intense color, line that up with the rock, line everything up, then note where my camera is. Then I bring my tripod over and set my camera up. You know, for instance, if it was 30 inches above this black rock, that's where I set my camera up and fine-tune things and then start making pictures. All right. I'm shooting this. This is the water's moving kind of fast, so I'm shooting a faster shutter speed because I want to have that rippling in there. So I'm shooting this at a 15th of a second at f/16 at ISO 200. That's what gives me, the difference of the little bit of texture in the water, shooting it at a relatively fast shutter speed. If I shot this at a super slow, this is a 15th. If I shot this at a 1 or 2 second exposure, that color would just become a big wash of color in it. We wouldn't have this interesting texture, which I think is the interesting part of this picture. The yellow, of course, is coming from the cherry tree, right? The reflection of the sunlit cherry tree, and the blue is coming from the sky. All right, down the river, here's just a little tiny section of waterfall. Again, it's a shaded part of the river. On the other side of the river is a sunlit, this is a maple tree, in fact. And for this one, I slowed down the shutter speed. This one's at a quarter of a second at f/22 ISO 125th. All right. I like having this rock in the foreground. I like having that because I can make sure that that's sharp, right? Because when we're shooting slower shutter speeds like this, that water and all that motion is kind of blurry and makes everything a little bit soft, which is just part of the effect. But having something that's solid in there, that rock, that lets people know that the picture is in fact sharp. It's just a motion blur from the slower shutter speed. All right, for this image, we're down the river a little bit further in a calmer section of water. The water's not moving a whole lot here. I actually placed this rock in there. I liked this little crevice. I put some water in there to get some reflection in that. That becomes the focal point of the picture. For this one, I'm a half a second at f/20. One of the things that can be tricky with shots like this is how do you set your exposure? For me, I like to do this using manual exposure. All right, I use spot metering, and I just pick a section. Like in this picture here, I spot metered right here. I zeroed out my meter, placing this as a medium orange, and made the exposure. All right, just pick a tone that you want to be a medium orange. It's all, this is kind of up to you. It's your artistic creativity. You can place this tone a little hotter, a little lighter. It's all, and then you can post-process it and fine-tune things. But remember, you can always, even if you're shooting in manual, you can always check your histogram, make sure you're not blowing out the highlights, make sure you're not blocking up the darkness of this rock, make sure you've got detail in those, but exposures are a little subjective when you're doing things like this, so be creative and don't be afraid to experiment. All right, here we moved out west. This is out in Utah. Again, this is a shaded stream. Now we've got this beautiful reflected light in this entire stream. What's going on here is off to camera left is a red rock wall. And that red rock wall is being hit by the very first rays of sunlight in the morning. So we've got this beautiful warm light on this red rock wall, and that crazy beautiful color is being reflected in this stream. Okay, and that's what makes this what I call a river of gold. Once again, I'm using spot meter. I'm on manual exposure. I'm spot metering. I'm just spot metering right here in the very bottom of the frame. This little bit of just spot metering right there, that orange, placing that as a mid-tone, and really pulling out the color in that orange water, right? And then once again, I'm using my histogram to double check, make sure that I'm not overexposing the top end of the stream where it's a little bit brighter. Make sure I'm not underexposing the rocks, right? Use that histogram and double check. All right, this is probably my very favorite reflected light image. This is a section of Bond Falls, which is a beautiful waterfall in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. This is exactly what we've been talking about. A shaded part of the stream. On the opposite shore is a yellow maple in full sun. And that sunlit maple, I've just lined up that reflection with this part of the falls, right? So the yellow color, yellow oranges, that all comes from the maple. The blue comes from the blue sky. I'm shooting a slow shutter speed, which gives me the effect of that milky water effect. This is probably a 1 second or a half a second exposure. Not only does it give me that milky water look, but it also blurs out that reflection and lets that maple tree just become an abstraction of color, which is the look I'm looking for. We can do this with wildlife, right? Exactly the same scenario. A shaded part of a pond. On the other shore of the pond is a row of trees, greens, yellows, reds, that's in full sun, right? This isn't photoshopped. In fact, I pulled the saturation out because I thought it looked unbelievable. But it's just a sunlit, reflected trees reflecting into in a shaded part of the pond. Exact same thing here with a golden-eyed duck. This one was out in Yellowstone. Again, I'm just lining up the reflected light from a bank of, I think these are aspen trees, maybe cottonwoods. But those beautiful yellow leaves are reflected in the water behind this duck. Look at how it pulls out the color in his eye. Another place we use this, you may not realize it, is when we're doing silhouettes, right? I'm just lining up the reflection of the beautiful color of the setting sun. He's standing in a puddle. No wind at all, so we got a beautiful reflection. But in addition to the reflection of the gull, we've got the reflection of the sunset behind the bird. Once again, spot meter, manual mode. I'm picking something that's a midtone. In this instance, it's right here underneath his chest. I'm taking a spot meter reading from there in manual, very tight, just metering that one tiny area, placing that as a midtone, letting everything else go where it will. Then I'm going to check my histogram. I'm going to make sure that my shadows, that my blacks are going to be decently black and that I'm not blowing the highlights on the right side of the frame. Okay, similar situation here with a great blue heron. This is actually down in Alabama on the shore of the ocean. Just lining up the most intense part of the color, behind the bird, spot metering, probably right above or right below his bill. They're taking a meter reading, placing that as a midtone, and zeroing out my meter in manual exposure, and taking the frame. Super fun, super creative. The key to all of this is lining up the most intense part of the color behind your subject, and then play. Play with different shutter speeds, right? Play with different f-stops. Don't be afraid to experiment. All of this stuff is experimenting. You're not gonna screw anything up. You're gonna get different looks. All right. So the next series of videos we're doing is going to be all talking about playing with water. The next one we're gonna move into doing neutral density filters to really play with water, and then we're also going to talk about using different shutter speeds on waterfalls and moving water to get different effects. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bar so you get notified when we upload a video. We've got a lot of stuff coming, so stay tuned. Thanks.